All right. Well, I think it is now officially time to get started. And welcome to our live virtual Washington, D.C. location information and networking session. My name is Katie. I'm from Summer Associate Hub and thrilled to have you all here. I'm a former BigLaw attorney recruiting director and spent my career at several big DC firms. I'm also a proud Washingtonian and currently live in Arlington, Virginia. So tonight's topic is a fun one for me. And if you've been here before, welcome back. We're so glad to have you. And if it's your first time at a Summer Associate Hub Live virtual series program, you're in for a treat and a lot of really great information. We've got a truly all-star panel of DC attorneys. And as I said before, it's not content that you have heard before. So you're in for it. But the agenda is as follows. We'll have a panel discussion featuring our attorneys from Williams & Connolly, Fried Frank, and Gibson Dunn. After the panel discussion, each firm will host a separate breakout room for those who want to join, ask questions, listen to hear more about the firm. And it wouldn't be a Summer Associate event without prizes and raffles. So be sure to enter our raffle. I'll be dropping the link into our chat because we've got some really great sponsored gifts from our great firms tonight. And so you don't want to miss that. You do need to be present to win. So make sure you stay on for that, if not anything else. I'm just kidding. But before we dive in, a final few housekeeping items. First, what is Summer Associate Hub? Summer Associate Hub is a free content and resource hub for law students embarking on the 1L and 2L recruiting process. We know from our own experience how hard it is as a 1L to really, understand and know what it's like to work at a law firm. And so our platform, summerassociatehub.com, has blog posts, podcast episodes, short video tutorials, and exercises, and other content to help you learn about practice areas, locations, and prepare for the recruiting process. We also host live events just like this, where students can learn directly from and network with law firm attorneys and recruiting team members. Our live virtual program series runs weekly through April, each with a different practice area or city location topic. And the link for RSVPing to future sessions will be posted in the chat, including our IP session tomorrow night, followed by corporate M&A on February 20th, and the Bay Area Showcase on February 21st. So we hope you'll join us for another session soon, and watch for that in the chat shortly. And finally, going back, we mentioned breakout rooms. I know sometimes people are like, breakout rooms, what? But these are good breakout rooms. At the end of the panel, around 8:10 Eastern, we'll move into the breakout rooms. Each firm will host their own separate room. And as I said, you can go and ask more questions or simply just listen to learn more. The breakout rooms have been a highlight for both students and firms, especially in making early connections as the recruiting season starts to kick off. The firms want to meet you all, want to meet 1L students. So please be sure to join one. And keep in mind that you can move between multiple breakout rooms. You don't have to stay in just one. And so that wraps up my housekeeping item. So we'll go ahead and we'll move into our panel. As I said, everybody's from Washington, D.C. That's why you all joined. You wanted to learn more about that market. And they're all based in Washington, D.C. offices of their firms. So instead of me introducing everyone, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Rachel, let's go ahead and start with you. Introduce yourself and your practice and briefly why you chose to practice in Washington, D.C.
Sure, happy to do so. And thank you so much for joining everyone. And thanks to Summer Associate Hub for having us tonight. I'm happy to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is Gibson Dunn and my practice at the firm. But before I do, just to introduce myself briefly, I'm a litigation partner in Gibson Dunn's Washington, D.C. office. I've been at the firm since I was a summer associate in 2012, which feels like a lifetime ago. And I practice in our environmental litigation and mass tort practice group, as well as our environment, social, and governance practice area. I'm a member of the firm's professional development committee, a former member of the associates committee, and a former summer program coordinator. So I'm happy to answer any questions about our summer program during the breakout room. In terms of my practice, it runs the litigation gamut. Really anything that a litigator does, I get to do. It's just anything that has an environmental nexus. And so that's things like complex environmental litigation, helping my clients defend against regulatory enforcement actions brought by regulators like the Environmental Protection Agency and the California Air Resources Board. And I think one of my favorite parts, providing proactive compliance counseling for my clients on environmental compliance topics. And that's exactly why I'm in DC. I always had an interest in regulatory and administrative law, and I really wanted to practice somewhere that had a nexus to government as well as the regulatory apparatus. And so working in DC was really appealing to me. I also think it's a slightly more manageable city than some of the other options, perhaps like New York or LA. And I found that that is really true, both from a personal standpoint as well as a professional one. And again, happy to answer any questions about all of that during the breakout room.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Loryn, we'll move over to you.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're so happy to have you. My name is Loryn Helfmann. I'm a fifth-year associate at Williams & Connolly in DC. We are a litigation firm almost exclusively, and we're a firm that does not require specialization. So most of us are generalists, including me. And what that means is that my practice is pretty diverse. I would say about a third of my docket is healthcare-related litigation. About a third of my docket is sort of general commercial litigation. So, company A sues company B because they had a dispute about a contract. One example of many. And then a third of my practice is frankly kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different things. I like to dabble in a bunch of different areas of law. So I did a little bit of patent work when I first started at the firm. I've done some securities litigation, some accounting malpractice, just a bunch of little things. And I've been at the firm since I was a summer associate in 2018, which now feels like approximately one lifetime ago. And chose DC, frankly, largely for personal reasons. I have family on the East Coast and knew that I wanted to be somewhere on the East Coast, but having grown up just outside of New York, sort of felt like that was probably not the right fit. It's great for a weekend, but not somewhere I wanted to live full time. And so I was just kind of looking at mostly Boston and DC, and just really fell in love with Williams & Connolly. And that's how I ended up in DC.
Great, great. Thank you so much. And then finally over to Andrea.
Hello, my name's Andrea Gege-Lange. Glad to see everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am a partner with Fried Frank. I actually started with the firm. It seems I'm the big sister of the group. I started as a first-year associate in 2006. I practiced in our New York office for over a decade. And then when the opportunity arose to move down to our firm's DC office, I jumped at it. And so I've been in our DC office now for 5 years. Being a partner in mergers and acquisitions and private equity, it means that my day-to-day practice involves advising clients in buying and selling companies, making investments. Some of my work is for private equity firms. So they are institutional clients who are specialized in buying and selling private companies, and that brings certain features to M&A transactions. I am also a member of our recruitment committee in the DC office for Fried Frank, as well as a partner champion for our women's forum. So happy to chat about any of that in the breakout rooms.
Great, great. Thank you so much. I think we'll move to our next question here. You each touched on it slightly, but maybe we'll get into a little bit more detail now. In your practice area, what are the clients and industries that make up the DC legal market? And how does your location in DC play into your practice specifically? And so maybe we'll stay in the same order. Rachel, we'll start with you.
Sure, absolutely. This is a question I love to talk about because I think it highlights what makes DC a really unique place to practice. I'll start with, who are my clients? What types of industries do I get to work with? And the answer is a little bit of everything. Sort of to Loryn's point, I like to dabble in different industries, learn different technologies, deal with different environmental statutes, all within the parameters of our practice group. But that means that I work with clients that range from everything from, medical device manufacturing to automotive manufacturers to tech companies. I have an e-commerce company that's one of my biggest clients right now, and you wouldn't think a tech company has environmental issues. Well, they do, because the environment, the environmental regimes, they touch everything. And particularly with how important and how focused everyone is on environmental issues right now, our clients are desperately seeking advice on how to ensure that they're getting out ahead of these environmental issues and that they're proactively complying. And so it's a really neat time to be in this space. As it relates to DC in particular, the closeness, the proximity to the Environmental Protection Agency, to the Department of Justice, to the White House really makes this a great place to practice environmental law and anything that has an administrative or regulatory nexus more broadly. And so that's why there's a lot of my colleagues at the firm who practice in the regulatory and admin space who are regularly working in front of government agencies or litigating against the government or proactively cooperating with the government to resolve an issue. And I think that's a little bit unique to DC. It's really nice to be able to walk down the street to go to the Department of Justice instead of having to hop on a plane and fly over to meet with them at headquarters. In terms of how it plays into my practice specifically, again, I think the proximity to the Environmental Protection Agency has been instrumental in my development of my expertise and my ability to market myself as an expert, who our clients want to go out and proactively hire. And so that's been part of my very first day at the firm. I was on an environmental matter as a very junior associate, and it was litigating against the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Justice. And so that meant that I was meeting with these attorneys as a first-year associate to get that exposure, that experience. And so I think the DC regulatory, administrative, and governmental apparatus, if you're interested in that area of law, this really is the best place to practice.
Great. Thank you for that. And Loryn, how about over to you?
Sure. I have a fairly similar answer. I think like Rachel, my client base really runs the gamut. I have represented crypto firms and football teams and pharmaceutical companies, and really sort of every industry you can think of, banking, healthcare. We do a little bit of everything. I think, being in DC particularly is nice if you're interested in what I would call, this is not like a term of art, but government adjacent litigation. So, pick a federal agency, whether it's DOJ or FEC or FDA or any of the alphabet soup of federal agencies in DC. They decide some company has violated a statute or a regulation, or potentially has violated a statute or regulation, and launches an enforcement action or an investigation. That is a big chunk, certainly not all of what we do, but a big chunk of what we do. And I think being in DC and kind of knowing the players at somewhere like DOJ or FDA is helpful both in sort of getting that work, and certainly when you're litigating a case and you kind of know who the attorneys are on the other side, that can just be sort of instrumental, even just from a relational perspective. I will say, our client base is certainly not limited to DC. We have clients across the country, and actually we have a fairly robust international practice as well. So it's not to say that is sort of all we do, but I do think being in DC is really helpful if you're interested in what I would call government adjacent litigation.
It's a great way to define it. And then lastly, over to Andrea. How about you?
Yep. So one thing about the DC market is, following on what Rachel and Loryn said, it really is very much government facing. There's a lot of litigation work, a lot of regulatory work in a number of areas, including national security, sanctions, and the like. But just about every law firm has an office in DC. And one of the features that distinguishes Fried Frank in the DC market is that we are primarily a transactional firm. So transactional practice. So I do mergers and acquisitions, but I have colleagues who sit in the DC office as well, who do fund formation. We have a really big practice in that area, as well as capital markets, finance, so lending money, sometimes for transactions and otherwise ongoing, as well as other practice areas adjacent to that. So what we offer in the DC market is a New York caliber transactional practice, but DC lifestyle. So all the benefits that come from living in DC. So more affordable housing, much shorter commutes, great restaurant scene, great art scene, all the museums and the like. So that's what we really see. Having a transactional practice means that our clients are really spread across the country. So of course, we have a lot of clients coming out of the New York area, a lot of financial institutions headquartered there. But in addition to working for investors, we also have clients around the globe and around the country. So I've worked over the past 6 months with clients in California, Ohio, Kentucky, London, Canada, just to give you a sense. It's very wide reaching. So it's not as though there are clients specific just to the DC area. Of course, there are also a lot of government contracts companies. So sometimes just necessarily as a function of being in the DC area, you may see more government contract or government contractor clients in the M&A space, but really it runs the gamut regardless of where you sit in my practice, whether it's the New York office or the DC office.
Great. Thank you so much. Three very, very great perspectives. I told you it wouldn't be things we heard before. But let's talk a little bit about office and that kind of headquarters versus non-headquarters and any differences or things that are important for students to think about as they're making their choices during the recruiting cycle. So Loryn, I think we'll start with you because Williams and Connolly is unique in their office location presence. But so tell us kind of a little bit to start, because it's a broad question, but what it is like to work in the headquarter office based in DC.
Sure. So Williams and Connolly is not just headquartered in DC. We actually only have one office, and it is obviously in DC. And that's something, frankly, that I'm not sure was even really on my radar when I was in your shoes looking at law firms. And it has become one of the things that I enjoy most about my sort of day-to-day life at the firm. Everyone that I work with is in the same building. I can walk down the hall to any partner or associate that's on any of my case teams and ask a question or just bounce ideas off of folks. I know everyone I work with. It's pretty common that you might have like a big filing and then you all go out for drinks or you go out for dinner. I know people's families and that's just been really nice to know people sort of outside of work. And it's not to say that that can't happen if you're at one office of a larger firm, but I think that being all in the same building in the entire firm in DC just really facilitates that sort of interpersonal stuff that happens in the lunchroom every day or after a filing. And it's something that I've really loved about being in one office in DC.
Great. So Gibson and Fried Frank's offices are both very, very large. So not that kind of, smaller DC offices, I don't think I just said that, are very large. So which helps kind of, in a variety of ways. But so either of you tell us kind of about your experiences in a non-headquartered office, but still very large.
Rachel, you want to chat? I'm happy to. Okay, I'll talk. So I have, as I mentioned, practiced for over a decade in our Manhattan office before I moved down to our DC office. So I have experience in both. Our firm is headquartered in New York, but we have offices in Washington, DC, as well as London, Frankfurt, and Brussels. We have over 750 attorneys firm-wide, and most of them are in New York, so probably about 400. And then I would say the DC office has about 100 attorneys. So what I can say, having moved from the New York office to the DC office, is that DC is a little more laid back, a little younger, a little more collegial. That said, our deal teams do work seamlessly across our offices. So just to give you an example, I'm actually one of the US staffing partners for our mergers and acquisitions group. And so in that context, partners or associates who need to put associates on, you got a new transaction in, the partner will call me and say, hey, I have a new M&A deal. I need a senior associate, and a mid-level associate, and 2 junior associates. I'll look through our team and draw associates from both the New York and DC offices. So I've been an associate sitting in New York working for a DC partner, and I've been a DC partner working with associates in both offices. So we do work across the 2 offices, as I said, in that way. I do like having a slightly smaller office. One of the benefits is that we do seem to have a lot of family-oriented activities. So for example, our Working Parents Forum had a summer picnic at the end of the summer out in Arlington. And so people brought their kids, we had a barbecue. It's that kind of thing that you see more coming out of our DC office compared to the New York office. So different things that go to some of the quality of life and the whole person of being an attorney in the firm.
Yeah, and I'll just echo some of the points that Andrea made and Loryn as well. I think it sounds like we're all really fortunate to work at places where there is a good collegial environment. And so going out for drinks after a filing with your team or going to the softball game, I think we're all lucky to have that. One of the things that I think is special and unique about Gibson Dunn is our free market system, which is actually the way that we assign or don't assign work, actually. And it's up to our associates to seek out the work that they would like to do. So if you come into the firm and you decide you want to do tax, you're welcome to try tax. And if you don't like tax, you're welcome to try M&A. And if you don't like M&A and you want to be a labor and employment attorney, that's up to you as well. And you can seek out that work. And what that leads to is a really seamless connectivity between all of our 21 offices worldwide. We have offices throughout the US, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And through the advent of things like Zoom and Teams, we're seamlessly connected to one another, and that's linked through our global hiring committee. So we actually have one hiring committee for the firm worldwide. We don't just hire based on market or even based on office. We have one firm mentality when it comes to hiring. And I think this is sort of illustrated by the fact that our managing partner, despite us being technically an LA-based firm, is in New York, and our chief operating officer is actually in DC with me. And so we really do have kind of a very global mentality for the firm. One of the things that I've loved about being in DC at a firm that's not necessarily based in DC is that we've been able to develop our own identity and our own expertise as a DC office. And so again, many of my colleagues focus on things that are government facing or government adjacent, as Loryn likes to say. But we also have, because we have a nationwide and worldwide litigation and corporate practice, folks who are in DC who never get in front of the Department of Justice and never want to. And so it's that flexibility, that diversity, and I think sort of that connectivity that really makes practicing in DC at Gibson Dunn pretty unique. And it's one of the things that I've enjoyed most about being in the DC office at the firm.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So as I'm sure many of you know and have heard from the panel, the DC area is supreme to any other city that you might be considering. But the DC area, or the DMV, is comprised of DC, Maryland, and Virginia, with Maryland and Virginia being DC suburbs. And so, you know, each of our panelists here, if you could tell us kind of what it's been like just living outside of work as a professional and or with a family, what your experiences have been like and how you kind of chose whatever area of the DMV you chose, you know, for your personal situation.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So as I mentioned, I've been in DC for about 5 years now. I live right downtown. I love being close to everything. So when I go for walks in the evening, I'm out walking on the National Mall. I'm a big theater person, so I'm down at the Kennedy Center or the National Theater or Folgers or one of the theaters around just about every month, sometimes once or twice a month. I love the restaurant scene in the city. I just took a group of our M&A associates out for a closing dinner at a 2 Michelin star restaurant in DC last week. There are several of them. It was delicious. One of the things I have come to see in DC is that, at least in my firm, and again, it's just as a reminder, we're a very transactional firm. We do have litigation. We have a strong IP litigation practice. We also have government contracts practices and other adjacent areas, as well as real estate, a very strong real estate practice in DC. But what I generally see in my firm are folks who are either from the DMV area originally, or sometimes who are from the South or the Midwest, even the Northeast, who really wanted to practice New York transactional law, but didn't want to be in either New York or Chicago, and so have selected the DC market and then get to have the benefit of the DC lifestyle. Transactional practice.
Great.
And I'm a little bit the opposite of Andrea. So I am an inveterate suburban knight. I live in Alexandria, so I'm about a 20-25 minute commute to my office in downtown DC. And like any good millennial, my home purchase was dictated by my dog. I wanted to make sure she had a yard. And so that is one of the things I love about DC and the DC market, is that you can go from the whole spectrum of great apartment or condo downtown or row house on Capitol Hill to, house with a yard and off-street parking in the suburbs, and you're still only a 25, 30, 40-minute commute from work. And that's on the days that you have to go in. I'm sure one of the questions that all of our 1Ls are thinking about is in-office presence. And I think the proximity and the options for DC of where you can live and how far of a commute you can have is really nice when you have to work with the flexibility of how many days you need to be in the office or you want to be in the office. In terms of, what I like to do as a young professional, I love DC because of how many outdoors opportunities there are. There's great hiking, great trails, great lakes all around, and they're, again, half-hour to an hour drive away. A plug for the DC winery scene as well. There are some excellent wineries out in Virginia that I would highly recommend. Happy to share those recommendations in the breakout room as well.
You stole my suggestion, Andrea, because I'm a big fan of the DC and Virginia winery scene as well. I'm somewhere in the middle. I am currently living downtown, but in the housing market. So looking at some neighborhoods and thinking a lot about where I might want to kind of put down more roots. And one of the things that I like about DC, and frankly, that has made the housing search so difficult, is because there's so many different neighborhoods where I can be a 10 or 15-minute commute from work and a 10 or 15-minute commute to like a big concert venue, an outdoor park, and like 10 other things. And it's just a really walkable city with like pretty good public transportation, I think. And so it's just really easy to find if you're wanting to live in a street that feels a little bit more suburban, but still be really close to the action downtown. That is totally feasible. And there are a lot of different neighborhoods that I think relative to other cities that I've lived in. I spent some time in Boston and grew up outside of New York. Each city to me feels like it has or each sort of area, neighborhood of the city feels like it has a really different character. So, if you're living in Navy Yard versus Capitol Hill versus Adams Morgan, those all feel very different. And so I think it's a place where you can kind of grow and evolve and just kind of move around in different neighborhoods as sort of it suits your life and development and your family. And that's been something that I've really, really loved about the city.
Great. Well, Loryn, we'll stick with you, and we'll move in and talk a little bit about clerkships. You have a really unique background for this question, but others should chime in as well. And so, given the proximity to the federal government and the court systems, a lot of attorneys in the DC area do clerk. Not everyone, but there is maybe a more of a skew there than in other big cities. Some directly after graduation or after 1 to 2 years working at a firm. So can you share a little bit about your clerkship experience and how you decided to start and working for a year and then move and how that has impacted your practice?
I think you might have wanted to direct this one to Rachel.
Rachel, sorry.
I actually didn't clerk, and I will say just quickly before I toss it over to you, Williams and Connolly has a lot of folks that have clerked. It's really common that we hire folks who are either planning to clerk or may want to clerk or coming off of a clerkship, but it is not something that you have to do to be hired at the firm, and it is not a prerequisite for being successful at the firm. I think people clerk and have great experiences, and I didn't, and have really had a great time at the firm regardless.
Great. Sorry for confusing. Getting too late for me. Anyways, I'm sorry. Rachel, tell us about your clerkship experience.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I was beginning to think that Loryn and I secretly shared the same identity.
No,
it sounds like we didn't have the same clerkship experience. So I clerked for Judge Amy Berman Jackson on the district court for DC. She does 2-year term clerkships, and she staggers her clerks, which meant that when I came in, I had someone who'd been there for a year to help me figure out what the heck I was doing, which was very much appreciated. I worked at Gibson Dunn as a summer associate, came back as a first year, was there for a full year, and then left for 2 years to clerk. And that came about just because of the hiring cycle for my judge. She was looking to hire a year out of where I was from graduation. I very much wanted to work for her, so I said yes. And Gibson Dunn was extraordinarily supportive in making that happen. The firm actually basically said, like, we'll be waiting. Just send us your resume when you're ready to come back. And it was really that seamless. In terms of clerking and what the experience brings to the table, as Loryn said, it is by no means a prerequisite to being a successful attorney in DC or otherwise, but I certainly think it does provide an amazing experience, particularly early in your career, to learn from someone who is at the height of the profession. My judge has done everything from being a federal prosecutor to being a federal district court judge to being in private practice. And so getting to learn from her and watch her on the bench work through complex legal questions with her while we were working on opinions in chambers really informed my thinking and my approach to the practice when I got back to the firm as a fourth-year associate. The other thing that I think it helped with immensely was my legal writing. There's nothing like having your draft torn apart by a federal judge who's been practicing for 30, 40 years to humble you about what you thought you knew as a legal writing instructor as a 3L. And so I think it's also really invaluable to clerk to get some of that experience on improving and enhancing your writing if you do want to be a litigator, or even if you don't. I think it's certainly worth the 1 or 2 years that it takes. In terms of how it worked with coming back to the firm, again, it was very seamless. Because Gibson Dunn is a free market system, I had control over who I was working with and what I was working on when I came back. And so what that meant is about 2 or 3 weeks before I returned to the firm, I just started reaching out to folks who I liked working with, who I had had a good experience with as a first year or as a summer associate. And I said, hey, I'm coming back in a few weeks. Do you need a fourth year? And by the time I walked in the door in October of 2016, I had 4 matters already waiting for me that I was able to just seamlessly integrate back onto. And so I think I can't speak highly enough about clerking. I may be a little biased because I think my judge is one of the coolest people on the planet, but I certainly think that it's a really nice way to complement your early years as an attorney with some hands-on litigation experience, whether at the district court or circuit court level.
Great, thank you for that. Andrea, anything to add from your perspective and transactional side or what you see at Fried Frank?
Yeah, we certainly have clerks coming in. We also will have some of our associates who go through the summer program with us and who will then do a clerkship in between. I would say clerkship tends not to be as relevant for a M&A or private equity practice. It's simply, it's much more litigation focused. And so it tends to be folks who want to go into litigation or something similar to that, some kind of arbitral panel, court facing, advocacy is a different practice compared to M&A. So we certainly do have associates who do clerkships either later on and then they come back or in between law school and coming to join us. But again, they're more in the litigation practice. So everything that Rachel had said, I would say kind of applies more in terms of the experience that it brings in terms of legal writing and just exposure to the field. And also networking, seeing people in practice. You learn a lot from getting to be in the courtroom and seeing attorneys do their thing.
Great, great. Well, I can't believe we're already kind of nearing our end of our panel discussion, and we're about to get to the last question here. This went by so fast, which is a good sign. But if you haven't already entered the raffle for tonight's prizes from our 3 great firms, please be sure to do that. And so as we go around the circle and ask our last question to each firm at the end of each panelist response, we'll do the drawing. And so you have to be present to win, so stay with us. And if your name is called, just drop a little "I'm here" in the Q&A functionality so I know, and so we can then follow up with you to get you your prize. But so before we get to that, I know a lot of anticipation. Last question. Now is the chance for each firm to really kind of give us our last plug on their firm. So in 30 seconds or less, why should someone choose your firm? And we have a little kind of tongue-in-cheek rule at Summer Associate Hub that you can't say the people because everybody says the people, and we know the people are great. So to the best that you can, give us something other than that about why your firm should be high on the list. And this time, Rachel, we'll start with you again. We'll stay in our order and go around, and then we'll do the raffle for the Gibson prize.
Okay, great. Well, I've got a little timer, so I'll keep myself honest.
So,
I would say the people, but I will tweak it. So I have 3 reasons why I have chosen Gibson Dunn 3 times as a summer associate, as a 1L, and as a 4th year. The first is the breadth of litigation expertise. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was a first year. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was a fourth year. I wanted somewhere where I could try a bunch of different things, all of which I knew would be excellent and at the top quality of litigation. Second is the free market system. I mentioned it earlier. It allows associates all the way up through partner to chart their own path and pick the matters, clients, and issues they work on. And then finally, not the people, the culture, which is inherent in the free market system. You have to be a team player in order to succeed at the firm, or people won't work with you. They won't join your matters. They won't staff you on matters. And so the culture really ensures that it's a positive place to work. It was a little bit over, sorry.
That's okay. No, that was good. So the Gibson prize tonight is a swag bag of Gibson swag. So all kinds of fun stuff. And so our winner, I'm just running our little wheel here from our entry, is Matt Floyd. So Matt, you are the Gibson Dunn winner. If you are here, drop a little "I'm here" in the Q&A so we know. Let's see, I think I just saw somebody. Oh yeah, Matt's here. Okay, cool, Matt. So we will follow up with you after this session. Congratulations. And so now let's move over to Williams and Connolly. But first, the anticipation builds. Loryn, give us your 30-second plug.
So I took my first deposition at Williams and Connolly 3 days after I was barred. And in the little over 4 years I've been at the firm, I have taken and defended 20 depositions. I have argued motions. I was leading discovery hearings in front of a judge as a second-year associate. And I wanted to be somewhere where I was going to get thrown in the deep end, sometimes before I felt like I was ready, with the safety net of partners.
Oh.
And that has been true from the moment I got to the firm until now.
Wonderful. Great. Great. So the Williams and Connolly prize is an Amazon gift card. So our winner here for that is Esther Park. Esther Park, if you are here, drop us a note because you won. Let's see. Esther is here. Awesome. Good. We're going 2 for 2. Okay, so lastly, over to Fried Frank, Andrea. I'm sorry. Oh,
Sure.
I'm having a fit tonight. But give us your 30-second plug.
Sure. Fried Frank is a really strong, as I mentioned, New York style transactional law firm. We are a slightly smaller firm than our peers. So we offer folks the opportunity to really get to interact with colleagues across their offices and get to know folks. We're a really particularly close-knit group of attorneys. I think what I have loved best of all is being able to do the quality of transactional law that I can do, but being surrounded by such a supportive and collaborative culture. So just to give you a sense, in the last year, I closed a $8 billion transaction where CVS took a company private called Signify Health. Our funds group was just recognized again this year as a Law 360 top asset management fund formation group. We just have amazing practices. And if you look across the partnership, you will see that we have a large number of what I like to call lifers in our law firm. In other words, attorneys who've started with us either as summer associates or first years, or who lateraled over to us very early in their careers, and who then stay with us just because we really have a culture, I think, that's sustainable to be able to practice the quality of law that we do at the level we do and thrive.
Great. Thank you for that. And so our final winner here will be for a Fried Frank logoed outdoor blanket. And our winner for that is, let's see here, Aisha Gill. If you are here, drop us a chat in the Q&A. Let's see. Well, we're waiting on that. A quick reminder that we'll be moving into breakout rooms in just a minute here. So scroll up into the chat. You'll see the links there. There's also a Word document that I dropped earlier in the thing that has all of the links in there. So if you just want to easily grab that, keep it up on your desktop so you can move through those rooms. It is a different room than what we're in right now. Oh, Aisha, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. is here and great. So we will get you a prize as well. But anyways, it is separate rooms from where we are now. So keep that in mind. And also remember that you can move between different rooms. You don't have to stay in the same one. Our firms are really excited to meet you all. So we hope that you'll take advantage of this time with them. And to all of our panelists, thank you so much for being here tonight with us. It was a great discussion and really appreciate your time and insight. So thank you all. And to the law students, make sure you sign up for another virtual session coming up again soon. We'd love to see you as we continue our schedule throughout the month. Thanks so much and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.